We'll just take our quick little everybody make your announcement that you're here, starting with you, Dennis.
Dennis Minnick here.
Becky Klein here. Sheriff Peters here.
Diana Larson here.
And Tanya Long here as well. We'll stand for a pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda that we received. I could take a second.
I do.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry, Dennis, I did not hear you. All those in favor of approval of the agenda say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. I would. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or concerns or anything with the consent agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that we received.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor of the approval of the consent agenda say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. We do not have any public comment this evening. And I realize on the agenda, it's always unfinished business listed first, but just so we can save time for Mr. Potter, I'm going to skip down to the discussion item under new business for the community needs assessment. So you don't have to sit here for any part of the meeting that isn't necessary, and you can be on your way. So we'll go ahead and get started with you this evening.
Okay. Need to do that. So let me just move the podium, but I'm about to move that. Speaking, and I've discovered with my bifocals, it's becoming more important that the text is closer to me while I'm speaking. So I want to introduce myself again real quickly. I'm Potter, the principal. So, and I've had the really pleasure of working with Cass County Library on several projects over the last few months. It's been a lot of fun for me and also very eye-opening, and hopefully we discovered some interesting things for you. So I wanted to first of all thank you for the opportunity to work with the staff and to work with you all on these projects. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the community needs assessment that we just included. I can see that you all have the hard copies of that, so that's good. It's good that you have those. I like to approach a community needs assessment a little different than a focus group or surveys or questionnaires or things like that. In part because I strongly believe that if you get a group of people together who have very limited information about a library and say, what does the library need to do? They will all say, buy no books, and we're done, and that's it. But the problem is they're kind of working from a limited set of information. And so I like to approach this with a different methodology. We're talking about that, but just to summarize for everybody else, what it is that we do is we start off by trying to identify specific community stakeholders. So the idea is not to invite every school principal to the community assessment, but to invite one person who is involved in public education, for example. But the purpose of that person is not to represent his or her school district, but to represent public education. Same thing with the faith community. We invited a person to represent the faith community, not every denomination in every city, because I don't think there's a room big enough with that every school principal and every pastor from every church. So we do that first, and then we try to get a group around 10, no more than 20, so that it's a workable group, so people feel like they can have a conversation. And the first thing that we do, or first thing we try to do, is start out by sort of preparing the field. So everybody kind of has a feeling that we're all talking about the same stuff. And the way we did that is that we invited some analysts from the Mid-America Regional Council to talk about economic forecasts, the economy and demographics that we can expect here in Cass County through 2050 or so. And job looks, where we're going to see jobs versus where we're not. How does Cass County differ from other counties in the metropolitan area? There are some differences. And we started with that to kind of give everybody the same foundation. Then we did a short SWOT analysis. That's a strength, opportunity, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. So we just kind of look, what are the strengths of Cass County? What are the weaknesses, opportunities, threats? List them all, put them on flip charts. And then the next step was, now that we've identified these, and with all of this information in mind that we've been talking about, let's visualize the ideal Cass County. What is, if we had the perfect community, wave a magic wand, realizing that we don't have the power in this room to actually do that. But if we could wave a magic wand, what would the ideal Cass County look like? And we started adding things. And then once we had the list of several things to visualize the ideal Cass County, then the question became, okay, what are the library appropriate responses? What can the library do with its traditional mission that helps us get to the ideal Cass County? And when you ask that question, after having 2.5, 3 hours of conversation, the answer is not buying more books. I mean, it could be buying different types of books to help us fulfill this mission, but it's not just buying more books. And you do wind up with some really interesting conclusions. Now, we did have 2 meetings of community settings, one in the north, one in the south. And again, that helps us make sure that our room wasn't too big and people could communicate and talk with one another. This probably won't come to as a surprise to you, but there are differences between the north and the south of Cass County. And it was apparent as we had our conversations. Nothing stark, but you could tell it was a slightly different community, valued things a little different, responses were a little different, needs and received services were a little different. Not a little, just a little different. But there were 4 big takeaways that were consistent across the county. And those 4 takeaways were access to important but hard to get services, small business support, leaning into other forms of literacy, and community training. So go back and just touch on those a little bit more. One of the things that we discovered, and this is one of the pieces that the Mid-America Regional Council supplied to us, is that, I believe the number, I believe it's 1 in 4. So every one person who lives in Cass County and works in Cass County, there are 4 people who live in Cass County but work elsewhere. And so there are all kinds of ramifications for that, including maybe building more small businesses so people don't have to go outside of Cass County in order to work, but also this first bullet, accessing important but hard to get services. So one of the ones that we came up with was things like notary services, passport services, things like that. In order to get some of these, lots of times you have to go outside of the county or outside of your community, outside of your town to do this, which costs money. You have to arrange for babysitters, all of those sort of things. And so if there's an opportunity to leverage the fact that the Cass County Library is in all these communities, and if they could provide services like fingerprint, for example, lots of times volunteer services, or even if you're working with children, you have them fingerprinted. And there are for-profit companies that do that. Libraries all over the state collaborate with such companies. So it becomes a win-win. There's usually a little revenue stream, not enough to build a new addition to a library or anything, but there's a little bit of money that usually comes as an offset with this. And it would help your community stay in the community so that they can participate in other things, and they don't have to take off the entire Saturday to get a passport application process because it's going to go to a soccer game or whatever it is that they need to do. So being open about that and also thinking about ways that you can collaborate. So for example, one of the examples I put in the report is the Sarcoxy Library, which Sarcoxy, tiny little city, town in southeast Missouri. Their library is actually co-located within a Missouri Department of Revenue license office. And so people come in, they look for license plates, they check out books, and it's one of those, again, the idea of essential services, because if that license office wasn't in Sarcoxy, people probably have to drive down into Bergen or Lawrence County, or maybe over to Joplin or something like that. You don't get their clothing. And so being open to thinking about what those are is something that it sounded like would be a potential win for the library. a service to kind of lean into. Second one is small business support. And a lot of this came from the fact that we kept hearing there were lots of small businesses or even large businesses like the warehouse businesses that are coming along for and there's a lot of need for what's usually known as wraparound services for children and for families. So the idea is that to help with the kids before and after school. And that is really a great business opportunity. There's a great business opportunity for small businesses to be able to start daycares, children's health, things like that. But again, those are not direct library or program responses. The libraries typically be in the before and after school daycare. Uh, but the library can be in a position to help people launch those businesses, that they can help with counseling, that they can help people develop business plans, that they can show people how to find mentors that can help them launch their businesses, that they can, that the library can sponsor before and after hours events, so the business community can find each other and they can talk and review together. The other thing is, and again, getting back to that 4-to-1 ratio that we were talking about before, there are lots of people that I'm sure technically work outside of Cass County, but maybe work 2 days at home and 3 days in Johnson County, Kansas, or something. And if that's the case, then creating space in the libraries where people can office, not at home because things are too loud and too messy and there's unstable internet and things like that. If the library can be a place that can help support that, then you can begin to support people being able to stay in Cass County and do their business, which is advantageous for the development stability, economic stability, and translate more stable revenues and more stable unit. So small business support, either helping people launch businesses or helping people succeed in their business, is another great potential use. And we saw that all over, particularly in the South. I'll mention this is the South part of the county, is that we were talking about reliability of infrastructure. Can you get portable bars in your cell phone? Can you get high-speed internet everywhere? And the idea of being able to have this at the library, or at least there is a place in town where you could go and do that, was something that sounded like a good thing for the people in that South. Leaning into other forms of literacy, that was identified as number 3. And I should mention that these aren't in priority order; they're just a random order. But traditional literacy, helping kids read, is a need. And certainly I think that the library is ideally suited to help with to combat summer slide. The idea that kids forget half of what they learned over the summer, and so then they go back to school and they have to relearn everything. Things like reading programs, summer camps, things like that, the library can do, and as part of a traditional mission, and there's a lot of evidence that says just simply reading a little during the summer and keep your mind nimble and you don't forget all that stuff. And if the library can do that to kind of help every child when they're age 5, enter school ready to learn and ready to enter school. And then also every summer, keeping children's minds nimble so that they don't forget everything, then the library can do its part to help ensure that the community is ideally positioned to do what it needs to do in terms of growing the economic or the educational base. But the other part of it, and that's more traditional literacy, and libraries do that. But I'm also interested in what we kept hearing was other forms of literacy, like financial literacy or information literacy. The ability to look at a news story and say, is this real or is it not? The ability to balance a checkbook and to understand that, you have to know what encumbered funds are. You can't spend, you just go to the ATM and it says this is your balance. This isn't really your balance. Conversation with my nephew. And so that the library can actually lean into those other forms of literacy and collaborate. I mean, we had banking people, as financial people. They say, yes, that would be great. We would love to be at the library. And kind of use that library, the library's reputation as a place in the community where people can come and get information and they're not really being sold anything. They're just trying to. And there were lots of people who were saying, yeah, we'd love to come alongside and help you with that. So literacy, like technology literacy, helping folks, their new cell phones and helping people with their e-readers and knowledge of literacy, information literacy, being able to spot fake news, things like that. Being able to know the good and bad associated with social media. There is good, but there's also bad. And the library can actually help people learn those things, as well as financial literacy. But those are the other types of literacy that we were talking about. And then finally was community building. And this came up in the first community needs assessment, people started talking about silos. There were silos in Cass County. That if you happen to be sort of in this community, you kind of know everything that's happening here. But if you're in this community, and I'm not necessarily talking about geographic, I mean, it could be, this is a community of, families with young children. And this is a community of families without children. And those two silos don't necessarily talk to one another because they're just living different lives. And that there's plentiful information on a certain topic here that this group can't necessarily find easily. And so the library could be a bridge to make sure. I think back in the old days, back when I used to have dark hair, that a lot of that was relied on from local newspapers. That you have, every town might have a local newspaper, might even be just a weekly newspaper. But that's what allowed you to sort of cross between communities. And with a lot of those going away, even though some of them are online and some of them are on social media, if you aren't on social media. I'm on a social media diet. I'm trying to stay away from social media as much as I can. You miss a lot of things. So how can you bridge that gap? So one of the things we were talking about, the idea that maybe the library invites people with similar interests around something, something unrelated. They're writers, they're crafters, something like that. But then you bring people together who are different. People in the political parlance that they talk about red and blue and purple. You bring together red and blue and purple to people, but they're all interested in crafting. And then what they begin to discover is that they have more in common. They have things that they care about, and they begin to share other bits of information. This becomes sort of like the switch. It becomes a neutral ground where people can come and meet each other and build community. So those are the four big things that came out of all four from both north and south of the county. There were other library appropriate responses that are identified, and some of them are specific to north or south. I'm not a believer that you have to do everything everywhere just because. I believe in equity, that the people in Garden City pay library taxes just like the people in Pleasant Hill pay library taxes, and as you get full value for their library service. But that doesn't mean that they have the exact same service in both cases, particularly if it's not needed in both cases. So I would suggest that you take a look at those additional library appropriate responses and understanding that there may be some things that are identified up north that maybe wouldn't fly to the south and vice versa. But I would still encourage you to really kick the tires and think about it, because those communities were saying this might be something that we need to do. So in terms of next steps, after we did this, sort of the next step in terms of planning is to kind of roll everything together into what people call a comprehensive plan. And the parts of a comprehensive plan are really three parts. The strategic plan, we have a strategic plan. The important thing about all strategic plans and planning is to review it, make sure that it's still leading in the right direction. Just because you have a meeting doesn't mean that you have to continue to follow it. It's no longer appropriate. So you can back up and revise, particularly with some of this new information. It might be useful to back up and maybe revise a couple of things before moving forward. So I recommend just a review and make sure everybody's so comfortable with the direction of the strategic plan. I don't think you have to go through one of these painful strategic planning retreat processes. I really think you could do this by making an hour sometime to sort of review it and make sure everybody's comfortable and make sure everything's still doing what you need to do. The next part is a comprehensive facilities. And so the idea here is that, again, thinking about your candidates, thinking about your strategic plan, what should our buildings look like? And what are we trying to accomplish out of our buildings? And I mean, I think after my tour of the buildings, some of the buildings need a little bit of help. And some of your, in terms of maintenance, I think some of the things that we need to try to determine is what's your model for the buildings. I mean, there are times when leasing buildings make sense. There's also times when owning buildings make sense. And I just got to tell you this, I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat it, but it seems like you've got the worst of both worlds right now. That a lot of your leases are not written, or the stories I'm hearing is that a lot of your leases are not written in a way that are favorable to you and not allowing you to maintain and customize and update your buildings the way you need. And and then there's some that are great. You've got some landlords that are really responsive and good. So some of this is trying to figure out what's the best thing to do in terms. Do you want to buy? Do you want to lease? And what are your parameters around this? Not just what you happen to fall into, but why do you want to buy and why? Oh, and when and why do you want to lease? And then the third part is the financial. And so a big part of owning actually any of this is making sure that you have the finances in order to do the things that you want to do. Whether it's maintain, update, refresh collections, refresh, whatever it might be. And a financial plan can help lay that out. And so, part of a financial plan, and the folks at Stiefel, which I know we've talked with and worked with before, they can help you with things like, financing, if that's something that you need to do. But they can also help you think about, we need to be putting a little bit away every year so that we have money to replace your current needs. So put in new electrical circuits because people need more electricity, or upgrade our technology because that's what needs to be done. And so they can help you with those sort of conversations. But once you have those three components sort of updated, if you develop a comprehensive facilities plan and then develop a comprehensive financial plan, then you'll have the makings of a comprehensive document that sort of leads you in all directions that you want to be thinking about. And then I think you're ready you're in really good shape. And then the real great thing is that when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I've got this 3.5 acres somewhere you want to buy it, you can kind of look at it in terms of what are our directions. Have we decided we're not going to buy property in this city? Et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got parameters that kind of help you with your decision. So those were my findings from the community needs assessment, the outcomes, my recommended next steps. And with that, I'm really happy to take the question. So any feedback that you might have.
Personally, feel like it's important. It's very thorough.
Well, thank you.
Very detailed and very thorough. Thank you.
Well, some of it was in cooperation with the Mid-American Regional Council, which of course Cass County is a participant in the Mid-American Regional Council. And Evan and I talked about this. I mean, I think it really is to her benefit to continue to interact with the people that we met through this process. I mean, just because once a year they'll update all of these, financial demographic tables, and Robin, she's been one of the first people in Cass County to get that. She keeps those folks. And one of the positive outcomes, I think, of this project is putting the librarian together with this great suite of data. Well, thank you.
You explained it great. It is so easy to understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have no question.
Thank you.
We have what we've seen from him, a facilities assessment or something. Was that what that was? We don't have a facilities plan yet, do we?
No, that's kind of what we've been doing all this working towards.
Okay. So will we work off of his assessment to develop the plan?
I've already started,
Okay.
and I should have something for you for the April board meeting to start looking at.
And we've got the financial plan started.
Right? Yeah, we got our hands in all of this
Yeah,
right
we do.
now.
We
And
do.
Yeah. Really good. And just kind of- I mean, the thing that I would say about the assessment that I have, at the end of the assessment, and I don't have it in front of me, so
I don't
know
have
exactly what I wrote.
mine either.
But I do know that the thing I kept asking Robin and kept asking the board at the time was, what do you want to do with these buildings?
Mhm.
That was the big question. And that, I think now we have some answers from the community needs assessment. You know, we need to have rooms where community can gather. We need to have small rooms where small business can be facilitated. I mean, there are lots of things that we may need to have broad room where we can have a community cooperative partner. You know, like a licensing agency or a post office that, USPS post office boxes and some things. So we're beginning to see, or at least I think I've helped you identify what you want to do with the buildings. And now that we know what to do with the buildings, then the facilities plan becomes a little bit more apparent.
I totally go along with a passport office. Not every branch needs to be able to
Right.
do passports, but Harrisonville, Raymore, I mean, people in Cass County have to go to Martin City or to Lee Summit to apply for a passport, is my understanding. I don't think you can do it at the Lee Summit or the Belton Post Office. Maybe you can do it here in Harrisonville. But, and you get there and they go, oh, we're not taking appointments, or you just have to wait in line like everybody else. So if we could move towards being a passport facility, maybe not every day of the week, but we'll do it on every Thursday morning. If you want to apply for a passport at the NRC, it would be available. I think that would be great if we need to pay some money to train some personnel. I mean, I use the notary facility availability on a frequent basis. So I think we just keep expanding.
There are lots of great services like that and some of them are services that need to be done by the library. I mean, just because of how they're set up, like passports and TSA pre-check, for example. But like I mentioned in here, there are actually companies that you can collaborate with for things like fingerprinting.
Fingerprinting, I didn't know that one.
Right, and that's critical. That was one that I think the lady from the health department was pointing out that's extremely important, even for volunteers. If a volunteer want to volunteer in the hospital, they have to be fingerprinted. So where do you go to do that?
If you work in the children's department at our church,
There you go.
you're fingerprinted.
There you go.
Just takes time to get all that figured out. I know.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You all know how to get a hold of me, and so does Rocco. So if there's anything else I can do for you, let me know. And as I said, it really has been my pleasure to work with you over the last several months, and I'll be able to do it again soon.
It's great. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
See ya.
Have a good evening.
All right, we will move ourselves back up to unfinished business on the Royal Annex insulation. I know, mouth was not working properly. Robin.
Yes. So when we last talked about it, it's been several months since this was last talked about, and the board had made a motion to approve a roof ceiling bid that we had, and also to include up to $20,000 to replace the insulation over at the Royal Street Annex. And we do have our facilities coordinator on staff now, Ian, and he's here today. He did go out and get an estimate, which was over twice what the allotted amount was. But in the examination and the discussion with the person doing the estimate, it was kind of determined it wasn't really something that we needed to do. So regardless of which direction you want to go, we have to modify that motion to either approve us a higher amount to do the work or to just remove that portion of the motion to do the insulation. And Ian can answer any questions that you might have about that. But Our recommendation is just to remove it, and we can do any kind of spot repairing that might need to be done from actual damage that's occurred.
So this 45,000 is for targeting the spot repairs? Or it's just the whole thing?
That's the whole thing.
Okay.
And that's your recommendation? Is to not proceed with doing the installation, to just do what might need to be spot
Yeah.
repaired only.
Do we have an estimate on partial replacement?
Based off of what they were doing for the insulation replacement, so they wouldn't actually, when you build a metal structure with corrugated siding, they lay on the fire retardant insulation first, and then they attach the corrugated metal to the building. This bid is not for them to remove the corrugated metal and remove that insulation. This is just insulating on top of the existing insulation. The reason why it's not really necessary, it's gonna add R value. That's pretty much about it, and maybe clean up the aesthetic look. The things that we're talking about patchwork that are damaged, there is water damage coming from the roof side, and that is in some areas. In other areas where you see puncture holes and it looks like water damage, it isn't water damage. It used to be a muffler shop, so there's a lot of, it's one of those things you gotta like tell and smell. The telling would be when it's water damage, you have that mold intrusion. It kind of looks like what you would see like rings of a tree when you cut it down. Water will get in there, it'll mold out, it'll dry up, and then you'll get more water, and it kind of molds up and dries up. You get a weird pattern from the mold.
Yeah.
With the exhaust and any automobile repair, it just penetrates and it just gets dark and dark and dark, and there's a more automotive pungent smell from the exhaust system. And that's what a lot of it is. The parts of the uh, that we would be able to replace is very few and minimal, which is why we're kind of recommending pulling off on it. I think the R value isn't also really going to contribute much because we're only adding R value to the walls. They all have 15-foot doors that open up continuously with bookmobile and the maintenance van going out. So it's not really safe anymore inside of the structure. So that's why we're recommending just kind of doing it in an evolutionary process, hitting target areas that we need to definitely secure before or after we seal through. But doing a whole system isn't going to provide us any value whatsoever.
I kind of thought when we originally talked about it that the point was to insulate the office area, you know, where people were actually working. I mean, I think we kind of understood.
The office area is insulated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yes, sir.
And any kind of spot repairing that would be done, it's going to be done just on top of the corrugated layer, just like it would have if they had done the whole thing,
Yeah,
right?
so the way they would have done that, since the ceilings, they just be kind of floating out the nowhere, and they don't have anything really attached to, they have a band-aid system, they would just create a cross grid, and then put the installation up for that to secure itself. So we would do something very, very similar.
But not do that till after the roof's been replaced, so we can
Yeah,
kind of
if we
see
wanna make-
where
Yes, exactly.
any leaks are
Yes.
taken care of before that's done.
Absolutely.
Okay, so really the decision that needs to be made is, does the library want to pay to have the entire installation done? Or does the library want to do what is only necessary to be done to repair installation areas after the roof has been taken care of? Either way we want to go, we've got to make an amendment to the
If
original.
it doesn't need to be done, it doesn't need to be done.
Yeah.
So I made the original motion, so I'll modify or just make the motion that I don't know, are we canceling that expenditure or are we just,
Let's remove the authorization for that $20,000 installation expenditure.
Yeah, because you want to keep the part of your original motion that approves the real roofing bid. Because that works still the weather.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon that'll be done. So I think it's just a matter of amending that original motion to keep the authorization for the royal roofing bid, but to remove the additional 20,000 for insulation.
Well, it might be easier just to say we cancel that and make a motion to approve the royal bid.
Will that work, Lindsay?
As long as you said cancel that. So as
We'll
long as it's
cancel
clear
the
as
original
what that-
motion
Yeah.
or withdraw we'd have to cancel it. So cancel the original expenditure and just make it simply to accept the roof bid.
That'd be fine. As long as everybody knows what we're talking about, that's fine.
And I'll second that.
I'm turned off. It's like, me.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to cancel the original approved motion, which included the insulation, and only approve the Royal Roofing bid that we received. So we'll take a roll call vote. Dennis,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Tanya, yes. Okay. Excellent. All right. We'll move on to back down under new business under the strategic plan update and the 2024 annual budget, annual report.
Yes, so you received the summary report for the strategic plan 2024 year end in last month's packet. We just didn't touch on that since we had the change with the weather and doing the video meeting. So we've got it in there for you again. The highlights from that basically, we excelled in areas like that had to do with programming, both in the branch and both outreach. The exploration library, and our fiscal responsibilities that we have outlined. We're making progress on goals regarding our circulation and our collections, and our goals for library spaces, which, Steve was just here talking about part of that. It includes the facilities plan, capital improvement plan. The struggles that we're seeing are having to do with maintaining our increases in our active users and our branch visits. And that really kind of reinforces my thoughts that we're always wanting to reach out to people to utilize the library. They're in the community, they're paying taxes for it. I want them to use the resources that they're paying for. But we need to really make sure we're trying to continue to engage our existing patrons so that they stay active. And so, and I talked a little bit in there about some things that I thought, like, we're focusing on customer service. And one of the things, to me, an aspect of customer service is to know what your resources are and your services and be able to talk about those and connect your patrons and customers with things that might be suitable for them based on your interactions with them. So, that's one part of it. Also making sure that the services that we're offering are things that people want to take advantage of, and that they know about them. So that even just beyond if they walk into the building, social media, I think we're going to do another postcard engagement. Those have been working out well to do those prior to the summer. So doing that this spring re-engages some lapsed users consistently year over year. So those are the kind of things that I saw, that I see how we did in 2024 and stuff that we want to look at for this year. And then the annual review is in there, and you got we corrected the financial page. The numbers were right, the pie charts were off on what you got sent, so we have a corrected page there. But that, really talks about all different aspects of things we did throughout the year. We did a lot of, I think we accomplished quite a bit, especially in the realm of our facilities and our service points. So we established a home for the Peculiar Express kiosk there at City Hall at Peculiar. And, we toured our current facilities, we assessed them. We began planning for relocation of this Harrisonville branch and the administrative offices. We acquired the Royal Street Annex, which gave us additional office space and storage space that we needed, facilities and outreach, and that's a permanent home for the bookmobile to live. So we did quite a bit. And then, of course, and it's not a surprise to me, but as far as like circulation, our digital circulation, digital items continue that trend. It just continues um, to increase year over year. So, um, did you all have any questions or thoughts on either of those things?
I had a question as far as getting information out to the entire community as to what the library is offering stuff. I know we do the social media stuff and you're talking about the postcards. What other aspects are we doing for people who either don't want to engage in social media or, I mean, just or whatever, computer savvy and don't want, what other ways are we trying to get information to the community about what's going on?
Outreach, and that's being done not only through the outreach department, but just our branches are doing a lot of that, especially like in the schools. But I think we need to, and I talked about it a little bit in the packet too. The bookmobile is actually back on the road this week, and what we're looking at is we've intended to relook at what we're doing for outreach services and kind of bring it beyond just focusing on library by mail and just focusing on bookmobile. And we've been intending to do it, and the thing has been, well, once we're fully staffed
Right.
in this department, well, we haven't been fully staffed, I don't think, since I've worked here in that department. And so we got tired waiting, and so it's let's look at what we can do now with the staff that we have and really like target where we're going to put our energy and try to be, the most efficient with what we have. And so, right now we've rolled out the bookmobile, but we picked our top three, like our highest popularity stops, and we scheduled those, and that's what we're starting with. And then we're going to look at different options for what we call like lobby stops, which wouldn't involve the bookmobile aspect, but would still involve having staff go out and be able to offer in-person services, bring holds, do notary, do reference questions, take returns and that kind of thing. Because a lot of our bookmobile stops that we were doing, that's primarily what was happening. There wasn't quite as much of the interaction with the mobile branch part, like the browsing part. And when you don't take the bookmobile, you don't have to have as many staff to man that particular stop or outreach event.
And it doesn't put wear and tear on the
It does,
book.
yeah, right. So we're playing with that. Definitely, I noticed too with the library by mail. We need to get the word out there to the facilities, the places where people are interacting with already if they are homebound, or if they even have a temporary disability that keeps them from being able to get out and about. They're still usually eligible for that service. So the places that they're going to get resources for that we need to also kind of be leveraging that as part of the information that they receive. Um, so there's just a lot, and of course, like we have always prioritized, and Steve mentioned it too, like early literacy and like youth. Um, but I don't think we have prioritized senior connections with senior citizens. And that is a huge, huge population right now. And they're all in various stages too. I mean, there's, the different levels of just senior 55 plus living all the way up to like assisted living and that kind of thing. And I don't think have historically done as much in those areas, but there's a lot of opportunity there. And that's a population that might not be engaging online. So being being in touch with the places and the people that they're in touch with to get them the information. That's kind of so we've got a lot of ideas. And I just dumped a few of those. And we're just trying to see what the interest is for this kind of stuff and where it's going to go in that area.
Starting late May and all the way into October, we have all these community fairs. I mean, we make a list of those and hit some of them sometimes.
Oh, we do.
Right. Okay.
And there's already been, I mean, like collaboration between outreach and the branches that go, because the branches, of course, want to participate in these things that are
Yeah.
in their communities as well, and we don't want that to stop. So this is just to build on what they're already doing. And I think once we do that, we'll have a better idea of what our staffing needs really are in the outreach department, and give us a better snapshot of what those responsibilities actually are. What are we looking for in staff for that department? We could better advertise what we're looking for, and then maybe actually attract the people that are better fit. So
Does the library partner with the different cities? I don't know if they put out newsletters or whatever they do on social type stuff, but to where the things that are going on at the library can be advertised also through those cities.
that
Is
happens
that
a
a
lot.
public?
Like the Harrisonville newsletter goes out, and like there's several organizations like the Chamber here in town promotes a lot of our stuff. Bright Futures, which is we have branch staff that are involved with that. There's a lot of partnership with that. So yeah, and the places we're established and they have that type of communication. Um, we've done pretty good to already kind of have that connection.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I just thought it was great you had 10 greens and your yellows were like not applicable or just barely only 4 and then only 1 red. I
Yes.
thought that's really good.
Well, thank you.
Anything else? Anyone? All righty. Thank you, Robin. We can move on to policy reviews. Were there any questions or concerns with respect to what we received in the policies? Thank you, Lindsay, for reading those and just making sure those were posted on good. Any questions?
That was very clear.
I did too.
Yeah, wonder, people that violate this, I assume there's not like, 3 strikes and you're out. It's very much handled on a case by case basis. So what occurs? Yes, that's the better approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone have any objection to moving forward with approving these policies for the library? Because if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the policies that we received, which would include the cybersecurity policy and the acceptable use of electronic resources revision. Maybe we should do those separately. Would you suggest we do those separately, or is it?
If nobody has any issues, one motion will be fine, but if there's something to do.
Okay. One's a completely new policy, one's a revision to an already existing policy.
I move we adopt the new cybersecurity policy and the amended acceptable use of electronic resources policy.
All right, we will take a roll call vote. Dennis? Becky?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Tanya? Yes. Oh, excellent. Now we move on to director's reports.
Okay.
Take it away, Lee.
All right. We did have a couple people that we hired since this came out last week. We did have one transfer to a new position at Archie, Linda. And I'll list them next month, but we did hire another part-time flex person here at Harrisonville. Her name is Madeline Swackhammer. And we were able to just recently hire one of the part-time couriers. That person's name is Martin White, but I think there are more interviews to come for that. As Robin sort of touched on, we've spent a lot of February working out goals with managers, and they've done the same with their staff. And at least some of those everywhere are focused on customer service. So, but HR and I have read through all of the managers' goals and approved them, so now they can get started doing, specific things to try to achieve those goals that they've set for themselves. We had a couple milestones. Ellen, the Drexel manager, had her 10-year work anniversary a couple weeks ago. And Glenna at Archie retired. Her last day was a couple weeks ago, but she got a nice few days of celebration where the community came in over 2 or 3 shifts and she got to talk with everyone. So that was nice. And we're gonna be starting branch tours, quarterly branch tours, where Robin and I and maybe Lori and whoever is available will go around, spend a day going to all of the branches in an effort to show all of our facilities to new hires, but also give current staff an opportunity to participate in that and hopefully put names to faces and see everywhere all in one day, as you all got to do not that long ago too. We think it'll be a positive experience for everybody, so looking forward to that. First one's April 2nd. Oh, and we have name badges, as you may have
I
seen.
noticed that everyone had them on.
So
Nice.
trying to get everybody everywhere to wear them. So
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. We have a tentative plan in place to begin renovations at Drexel. And so the plan is this spring is to start with the exterior improvements, and that's going to be painting and landscaping on the front there, and signage. And then interior renovations we're scheduling for fall. Right now, we're thinking September 8th through the 19th. It's a couple of weeks, and we'll need to close during that time so we can take everything out of the building. And that's going to be removing wall paneling and painting, replacing carpet, making the restroom ADA compliant, ceiling fans. It's going to look like a whole new little jewel of a branch. So I've sent all this information, the details to the landlord, and we have his blessing, but he wants to run it by because the branch is still in the trust, Bill's trust, and so he's running that by the trust attorney right now. So I'm just waiting to hear back on that, but that's tentatively that plan. And then here next week, facilities is going to go over and work at Garden City. They have like these little poles, structural poles throughout the branch, and Jana would like for them to be enclosed in like sheetrock and painted. And so they're going to work on that on the Tuesdays and Fridays that they're closed. And it should just take them a few days of working on it to get it done. So that should be done around the 1st of April.
Nice.
And then we've begun with bi-weekly meetings with Navigate and Clark and Anderson to start on the plans for the Harrisonville relocation. So
Anything from the trustees?
No.
Any comments? Okay. Well, I would entertain a motion to recess to executive session for legal if there's nothing further.
I make a motion we adjourn to closed session to address legal revised statute 610.021.1.
I'll second that.
To go into that, does that allow us to also discuss real estate and have separate motions?
It is not part of the agenda, so it's only legal for this evening. That'd be correct. I mean, right? We can't add something, ad hoc something, because we've already approved the agenda. It's been posted and all that kind of stuff. I will take a roll call vote to recess to executive session for legal. Dennis? Becky?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Tanya, yes.